In the heart of the nation's capital, President Donald Trump steps before the cameras with an announcement he describes as decisive, historic, and essential for public safety. His target today, Memphis, Tennessee, a city he says has become a dangerous symbol of America's urban crime crisis. In his view, the federal government must act where local authorities have failed. The announcement, made from the White House, marks the latest chapter in Trump's sweeping crackdown on crime across Democratic-run cities. The president signed what he called a Memphis Safe Task Force into existence, a memorandum that in practice orders the deployment of National Guard troops to the streets of Memphis. As Trump himself declared, today, at the request of Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, who stands with us, I am signing a presidential memorandum to create the Memphis Safe Task Force. This initiative is very important because of the crime that is occurring not only in Memphis, but in many other cities as well. We will take care of all these cities step by step, as we did in Washington. Right now, there is virtually no crime in Washington. With those words, the president claimed success in the nation's capital, citing Washington, D.C. as proof that his law and order policies work. Critics, however, dispute this characterization, pointing to persistent crime, even in the shadow of the White House. Yet Trump's framing leaves little room for nuance. He presents the choice as one between federal intervention and continued urban decline. The decision, however, raises complex constitutional questions. Under the Posse Comitatus Act, federal troops are generally restricted from domestic law enforcement. Trump is sidestepping that restriction by leaning on the National Guard, called up at the request of Governor Bill Lee. Supporters argue this makes the deployment legal and necessary. Opponents insist it still represents federal overreach, with troops effectively policing American citizens. The legal battle may well echo through the courts, but for now the president insists the authority is clear and the mission is urgent. Why Memphis? The city, home to more than 600,000 people, has long struggled with some of the highest crime rates in the nation. In recent years, violent crime, homicides, and gang activity have shaken communities. Carjackings and shootings have become regular features of local headlines. For residents, the promise of added security may sound appealing. For critics, though, deploying troops into Memphis risks further inflaming tensions and militarizing neighborhoods that already feel over-policed. The symbolism of choosing Memphis is powerful and contested. For the president, it is a way to show that his law and order message applies everywhere, not just in the nation's capital. For civil rights advocates, it stirs painful memories. Memphis is the city where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968, and the presence of federal troops on its streets evokes a heavy historical weight. Activists warn that this decision risks repeating the mistakes of the past by meeting social crises with military force rather than community investment. The political undertones are unmistakable. Trump is not simply addressing crime. He is advancing a narrative about democratic-run cities as failed, lawless, and incapable of self-government. By sending troops into Memphis, he is signaling to his base that he alone can restore order. Supporters at his rallies cheer the announcements, viewing them as bold, unapologetic action. Opponents, however, describe them as theatrics, designed less to reduce crime than to inflame political divisions and dominate headlines. Reactions in Memphis itself are mixed. Some residents, exhausted by nightly violence, tell reporters they welcome any effort that might make their streets safer. One local business owner said, "If it means fewer bullets flying through our neighborhood, then yes, send them in." Others are far less convinced, warning that soldiers on the streets will bring fear, not peace. Civil rights leaders, clergy, and community activists caution that such a deployment could undermine trust between residents and law enforcement, eroding the very stability Trump claims to be restoring. In Washington, the move has already ignited fierce debate. Republican allies praise the president's decisiveness, portraying him as a leader unafraid to use every tool at his disposal. Democrats call it an abuse of power, insisting that real solutions to crime come through education, job creation, and reforms in policing, not the insertion of troops. Members of Congress are openly asking, if Memphis today, which city will be next? Could Chicago, Baltimore, or Philadelphia soon see similar interventions? The controversy is not confined to American borders. Around the world, Trump's order is being watched closely. Allies in Europe, who have long expressed concern about the polarization of US politics, now see images of soldiers mobilizing in American cities. For human rights groups, the optics are troubling, reminiscent of governments elsewhere that blur the line between military power and civilian policing. Foreign commentators note that while America criticizes other nations for heavy-handed tactics, it now risks appearing to use similar measures on its own citizens. Trump, however, remains unapologetic. He frames the criticism as irrelevant noise, a distraction from what he calls the core mission, restoring safety to America's streets. His message is straightforward: law and order first, objections second. He repeats his success story in Washington and vows Memphis will be the next example of what he describes as federal resolve crushing urban chaos. The question now is whether the deployment will achieve those aims. Will crime decline in Memphis and will residents feel safer? Or will tensions rise, protests grow, and legal challenges mount against a president who continues to test the limits of executive power? The coming weeks may provide answers, but the divide is already clear. Trump's supporters hail him as a protector of American families, while his critics accuse him of militarizing domestic life and using fear as a campaign tool. In his own words, Trump insists, "We will take care of all these cities, step by step, as we did in Washington." Right now, there is virtually no crime in Washington. The White House has framed this as a matter of necessity, a move that will save lives and bring stability. His opponents frame it as a dangerous precedent that could alter the balance between state, local, and federal power for years to come. As the ink dries on the president's memorandum, the nation is left to watch and wait. Memphis, a city both proud and troubled, now stands at the center of America's latest law and order experiment. For some, the troops' arrival represents hope. For others, it signals the start of yet another struggle over justice, freedom, and the limits of presidential authority. What happens in Memphis will not stay in Memphis. It is now a test case of crime policy, of executive power, and of America's uneasy balance between security and liberty.
Today, at the request of Governor Bill Lee of Tennessee, who's standing with us, as you know, I'm signing a presidential memorandum to establish the Memphis Safe Task Force, and it's very important because of the crime that's going on, not only in Memphis, in many cities, and we're going to take care of all of them, step by step, just like we did in D.C. We have virtually no crime in D.C. right now.